Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. The thing about deep space salvage is that 99% of the time, you find garbage. Broken satellites, abandoned mining equipment, the occasional escape pod with a very deceased occupant who really should have checked their oxygen levels before panicking. It's unglamorous work, poorly paid, and generally reserved for species who couldn't cut it in more respectable professions, which is exactly why Gideon found himself staring at a 3-meter-tall block of pure black. Something floating in the middle of absolutely nowhere. "Bannock," Gideon said slowly, his voice carrying that special tone humans reserve for moments when the universe decides to get weird. "Please, tell me you're seeing this too." The reptilian captain's scales shifted from their usual muddy green to a pale yellow, which Gideon had learned meant either excitement or intestinal distress. Given the situation, it could honestly go either way. "I see it," Bannock hissed, his forked tongue flicking out nervously. "Des, run a full-spectrum analysis. Silmora, check the historical databases. I want to know what in the name of the 12 suns we're looking at." The gaseous mass that was Des rippled in their containment sphere, colors shifting as they processed information. "Captain, this is going to sound insane, but the object has no energy signature. None. It's not reflecting light. It's not emitting heat. It's not even registering gravitational distortion beyond its physical mass." "That's impossible," Silmora chittered, her mandibles clicking rapidly as her 6 legs carried her across the salvage ship's cramped bridge. The insectoid's compound eyes glittered in the dim lighting. "Everything has an energy signature. Even dead matter interacts with the quantum field." "Well, apparently nobody told that thing," Des replied, their voice resonating from the sphere's speakers with a sound like wind through crystal chimes. Gideon leaned forward in his seat, squinting at the viewing screen. The object was perfect. Too perfect. Every angle was precise, every surface flawless. It looked less like something manufactured, and more like someone had taken the concept of black rectangle and made it real. "It's beautiful," Silmora whispered, and Gideon had to agree. There was something almost hypnotic about it. "It's probably also worth more credits than this ship will earn in a decade," Bannock added, because of course the captain's first thought was profit. "Gideon, you're the linguist. See any markings, symbols, anything that might tell us who built this thing?" Gideon pulled up the enhanced imaging on his console, running every filter he had. Infrared, ultraviolet, X-ray, magnetic resonance. Nothing. The surface remained stubbornly, impossibly blank. "Not a single mark," he said. "It's like someone made the universe's most intimidating paperweight." "Or a coffin," Des offered helpfully. "Thank you, Des. Very comforting." Bannock's tail swished in agitation. "Well, we're not leaving it here. Silmora, prep the cargo bay. We're bringing it aboard." The retrieval took 3 hours, mostly because the object seemed to have its own ideas about physics. It didn't want to be moved. Not in an aggressive way, but more like trying to push a boulder uphill while the boulder politely declined to cooperate. Eventually, through a combination of magnetic grapples and sheer stubborn determination, they managed to coax it into the cargo bay. Gideon stood in front of it now, hands on his hips, feeling distinctly like he was being judged. Which was ridiculous. It was an object. Objects didn't judge. Except this one kind of did. "So," he said to the monolith, because talking to inanimate objects was apparently what his life had come to. "You going to tell us what you are, or are we playing the mysterious artifact game?" Silence. Obviously. Silmora approached from behind, her feet making soft clicking sounds on the metal deck. I've checked every archaeological database in known space. Nothing even remotely similar appears in any recorded civilization's remains. How old are we talking? Gideon asked. Based on the spatial coordinates and the object's trajectory? Minimum 10 million years. Possibly much older. Gideon let out a low whistle. That predates the avian empire, the mollusk collective, even the insectoid hierarchy. It predates everything, Silmora confirmed, her voice carrying a mixture of excitement and unease. Gideon, this could be a remnant of the precursors. Every spacefaring species had myths about the precursors, the ancient ones, the first builders, the civilization that supposedly seeded the galaxy with the foundations of technology before vanishing without a trace. Most scholars considered them legend, a convenient explanation for why so many species had developed similar technologies independently. But standing in front of this impossible black monolith, Gideon was starting to think the scholars might have been wrong. "We need to report this," Bannock announced, entering the cargo bay with Des floating behind him. "Something this significant belongs in a research facility, not on a salvage ship." "And miss out on the finder's fee?" Gideon asked, raising an eyebrow. "The finder's fee for a precursor artifact would set us up for life," Bannock replied. "Besides, we're not equipped to study this properly. We need experts." Gideon hated when Bannock was right. It happened depressingly often. The nearest neutral research station was Babel Hub, a massive orbital platform that served as a meeting point for multiple species scientific communities. It took them 6 days to reach it, and during that entire time, the monolith sat in the cargo bay, doing absolutely nothing. Gideon visited it daily anyway. He couldn't explain why. There was just something about it that drew him in, like it was waiting for something. Or someone. On the 3rd day, he'd brought his lunch down and eaten in front of it, narrating his meal like he was hosting a cooking show. And here we have a delightful protein paste, vintage last cycle, with notes of vague chicken flavor and institutional despair. The monolith had not been amused. Or maybe it had. Hard to tell with a featureless black rectangle. When they finally docked at Babel Hub, word of their discovery spread faster than a containment breach. Within hours, the cargo bay was packed with scientists, researchers, and various officials, all arguing about who had jurisdiction over the artifact. Dr. Amos Foale, an avian scholar with feathers so precisely groomed they probably had their own maintenance schedule, pushed his way to the front of the crowd. Clearly, this is of avian origin. The mathematical precision of the construction, the elegant simplicity of design. These are hallmarks of the early empire. "With respect, Doctor," Lanta interjected, her translucent mollusk body rippling with polite disagreement. "The avian empire is only 3 million years old. This object predates your civilization by millions of years. Then perhaps the artifact proves my people's heritage extends further back than previously believed," Amos countered, ruffling his feathers indignantly. Gideon watched the argument unfold with the weary resignation of someone who'd seen this exact scenario play out 100 times. Every species wanted to claim the glory. Nobody wanted to admit they didn't have all the answers. "Has anyone tried actually interfacing with it?" he asked, loud enough to cut through the bickering. The crowd fell silent, turning to look at him with expressions ranging from confusion to condescension. "Interface?" Amos repeated, as if Gideon had suggested they try licking it. "Young human, this is a relic of immeasurable historical significance, not a computer terminal." Everything's a computer terminal if you're brave enough, Gideon muttered, but he stepped back and let the experts do their thing. Over the next several hours, various species attempted to analyze the monolith using every piece of technology available. Quantum scanners, neural probes, dimensional phase readers. One enthusiastic geologist even tried hitting it with a hammer, which accomplished nothing except embarrassing his entire species. The results were uniform. Nothing. The artifact remained stubbornly inert, refusing to acknowledge any attempt at interaction. It's almost like it's choosing not to respond, Silmora observed, her mandibles twitching thoughtfully. Or it's waiting for something specific, Gideon added. Like what? Bannock asked. Gideon shrugged. If I knew that, I'd be a lot more useful around here. As the station's chronometer ticked past midnight, or what passed for midnight on a multi-species orbital platform, most of the researchers had given up and gone to their quarters. Only a skeleton crew remained, monitoring the artifact in case it decided to do something interesting. Gideon sat on a cargo crate, eating another meal of protein, paste, and staring at the monolith. Des floated nearby, keeping him company. You talk to it a lot, Des observed. It's a good listener, Gideon replied. Never interrupts, never judges, never tells me I'm doing everything wrong. Sounds like my ideal relationship. Gideon laughed, then paused. An idea was forming, probably a stupid one. But then again, stupid ideas were kind of his specialty. He stood up, walked over to the monolith, and placed his hand flat against its surface. It was cool to the touch, but not cold. Smooth, but not slippery. It felt organic somehow, despite clearly being artificial. Hello? He said simply, and the universe held its breath. The monolith lit up like someone had flipped a switch in the universe's basement. Gideon jumped back so fast he nearly tripped over his own feet, arms windmilling as Des quickly solidified a pseudopod to steady him. The surface of the artifact had transformed from matte black to something that looked like liquid starlight, patterns flowing across it in waves of silver and gold. Oh, you have got to be kidding me, Gideon breathed. Holographic displays erupted into existence around the monolith, filling the cargo bay with three-dimensional interfaces covered in symbols that seemed to shift between languages too quickly to follow. And then, cutting through the chaos, a voice. Not a sound, exactly. More like a concept that translated directly into understanding, bypassing ears entirely and going straight to the brain. When it spoke, everyone in the cargo bay heard it in their own language, their own dialect, perfectly calibrated to their understanding. Creator access granted. Voice pattern authenticated. Welcome, architect. The silence that followed was so complete, you could have heard a quantum particle sneeze. Gideon stared at the monolith, then at his hand, then back at the monolith. I'm sorry. What? The cargo bay doors burst open as security personnel flooded in, followed by half the station's scientific community in various states of undress and panic. Apparently, the monolith lighting up like a supernova had triggered every alarm on Babel Hub. Dr. Amos arrived at the front of the pack, his crest feathers standing straight up in alarm. What did you do? I said hello, Gideon replied, still staring at the now glowing artifact. Apparently, it's very polite. Lanta glided forward, her mollusk body shimmering with bioluminescent curiosity. The system called you Creator. It authenticated your voice pattern. Human, Gideon, do you have any explanation for this? I really, truly, genuinely do not, Gideon said, and he meant it. His family had been mediocre for generations. His father was a cargo inspector. His mother taught basic mathematics to disinterested students. The most historical significance in his bloodline was his great-grandfather once meeting a minor politician at a spaceport. "This is clearly a malfunction," Amis declared, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "The system must have degraded over time. It's responding to random input." "Random input doesn't typically grant creator access," Silmora pointed out, moving closer to examine the holographic displays. "These interfaces are active, responsive. Gideon, try touching one." "What if it explodes?" Gideon asked. "Then we'll have answered an important scientific question," Bannock offered, which was not nearly as comforting as he probably intended. Gideon reached out slowly, his finger hovering over a glowing symbol that looked vaguely like a spiral galaxy having an identity crisis. The moment he made contact, the symbol expanded, filling his vision with cascading information. Star charts, planetary coordinates, mathematical formulas that hurt to look at, blueprints for technologies that seem to violate several fundamental laws of physics out of pure spite. "Oh, this is bad," Gideon whispered. "This is really, really bad." "What do you see?" Lanta asked, her voice gentle but urgent. "Everything," Gideon replied, pulling his hand back. The display collapsed back into its symbol form. "I see everything. Faster-than-light communication arrays, zero-point energy harvesters, matter replication matrices. This thing is a database, and it's packed with technology that makes our current stuff look like stone tools." The crowd erupted into chaos. Species representatives started shouting over each other, each demanding access, claiming rights, threatening legal action. It was less like a scientific gathering and more like a very educated riot. Amis's voice cut through the noise, sharp and authoritative. "This artifact clearly belongs in the custody of the Galactic Archaeological Preservation Committee. As the senior GAPC representative on this station, I'm invoking emergency protocols. Nobody touches this device until proper procedures are followed." "Proper procedures?" Bannock's tail lashed angrily. "My crew found this artifact. Salvage rights are clearly defined in interstellar law." "Salvage rights don't apply to items of universal cultural significance," Amis countered. "And who decides what's culturally significant?" a reptilian official demanded. "The committee I conveniently represent," Amis replied without a hint of shame. Gideon tuned out the argument, his attention drawn back to the monolith. The displays had dimmed slightly, but they hadn't deactivated. It was still waiting for him. Specifically, him. "Why me?" he asked quietly, pressing his hand against the surface again. The voice returned, speaking only to him this time. "Voice pattern matches archived genetic markers. Neurological structure compatible. Cognitive framework suitable for interface protocol." "That's great and all, but I'm pretty sure I didn't build you. I can barely build furniture without leftover parts." "You did not build this archive. This archive was built for you." Gideon felt his stomach drop somewhere into his boots. "For me specifically. Or for humans. Artifact? Unless the artifact's builders encountered humans before," Silmora suggested. "Or encountered something that would eventually become human," Des added. "Evolution takes time. Maybe they projected forward, identified promising species, and set up these archives as gifts for when those species reached technological maturity." Gideon's head was starting to hurt. "So you're saying some ancient super-civilization looked at early hominids banging rocks together and thought, 'Yes, these ones. These are the ones we'll give our cosmic library to'?" "When you put it that way, it does sound absurd," Silmora admitted. "It sounds more than absurd. It sounds—" A heavy knock on the door interrupted him. Bannock's hand moved instinctively to the plasma pistol at his hip. "Who is it?" "Station security," a voice called. "We need to speak with Gideon regarding the artifact." The crew exchanged glances. "Tell them I'm not here," Gideon whispered. "They can scan for life signs," Des pointed out. "Tell them I died? That seems difficult to maintain." Another knock, more insistent. "We know you're in there. This can be easy or complicated. Your choice." Bannock sighed and opened the door. 3 security officers stood in the corridor, along with Lonta, who offered an apologetic ripple. "I'm sorry," the mollusk said. "The Council has convened an emergency session. They're demanding Gideon's presence." "Demanding?" Gideon asked. "Very strongly requesting," Lonta amended, "with implications of consequences if the request is ignored." "So, demanding?" "Essentially, yes." Gideon stood, trying to project a confidence he absolutely did not feel. "Fine. Let's get this over with." The council chambers were packed. Representatives from 24 species filled the curved amphitheater, their voices creating a cacophony of competing languages and translation delays. Gideon was escorted to the center platform, where he stood feeling remarkably like a specimen under examination. Amis occupied a prominent position in the avian delegation, his feathers gleaming under the chamber's lights. The human has activated a device of unprecedented historical and technological significance. The question before this council is simple. What do we do about it? "We study it," a crustacean representative clicked, "under proper scientific protocols with international oversight. We secure it," a military officer from the Reptilian Confederation countered. "Technology this advanced could be weaponized. It's a security risk." "We preserve it," Amis interjected. "Archaeological significance supersedes all other concerns." "What about asking the artifact what it wants?" Gideon suggested. The chamber fell silent, all eyes turning to him. "I'm sorry, what?" Amis asked. "The artifact is clearly intelligent," Gideon continued. "It has an interface system, voice authentication, stored intentions. Maybe instead of fighting over it like it's a prize, we should ask it what it was, designed for." "Objects don't have intentions," Amis said dismissively. "This one called me an operator and said it was built as a gift. That sounds pretty intentional to me." Lonta glided forward. "The human raises a valid point. If the artifact can communicate, we should attempt dialogue. Gideon, are you willing to interface with the device again under observation?" Gideon thought about saying no, about walking away from this entire mess and going back to his quiet, boring life of salvage work and protein-paced dinners. But curiosity had always been his weakness. "Yeah," he said, "let's see what this thing really wants." They moved the monolith to Babel Hub's main research amphitheater, which required 6 loading mechs, a structural engineer having a minor panic attack, and Bannock threatening to shoot anyone who scratched his finder's fee. The artifact now sat on a reinforced platform, surrounded by every scanning device known to science, and a few that probably weren't legal in most sectors. Gideon stood before it, acutely aware of the 100 pairs of eyes, optical sensors, and various alien perception organs focused on him. The observation gallery was packed. This had stopped being a scientific inquiry and had become a spectator sport. "No pressure," he muttered. "Actually, quite a lot of pressure," Des corrected from their position near the monitoring equipment. "If I'm reading these atmospheric sensors correctly, the collective breathing in this room has increased ambient pressure by 0.003%. Not helping, Des. Gideon placed both hands on the monolith's surface. It responded immediately, the same liquid light flowing across its surface, holographic displays blooming into existence. But this time, he didn't pull away. This time, he leaned into it. "Okay," he said. "Let's talk. What are you?" The voice resonated through the chamber, audible to everyone present. "I am the Obsidian Archive, repository of knowledge constructed by the Precursor Collective. Purpose: preservation and transmission of accumulated wisdom to designated successor species." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Precursor Collective. The name alone carried weight. "And humans are the designated successors?" Amis called out, his voice sharp with skepticism. "Humanity is designated as primary operator species. Authentication protocol confirms genetic and neurological compatibility." "Why humans?" Lanta asked, her translucent body shimmering with curiosity. "By what criteria were they chosen?" The archive paused, and Gideon could have sworn he felt it thinking. Which was absurd. But then again, absurd was pretty much his baseline at this point. The Precursor Collective studied all developing species within this galactic sector. Analysis focused on long-term evolutionary trajectory, cognitive flexibility, social adaptability, and creative problem-solving capacity. Humanity demonstrated optimal balance across all measured parameters. Balance? Silmora moved closer, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Not superiority? Correct. Individual species demonstrated excellence in specific areas. Avian species, mathematical precision, architectural sophistication. Insectoid species, collective intelligence, efficient resource management. Mollusk species, diplomatic cognition, multi-perspective processing. Reptilian species, strategic thinking, long-term planning. Humanity demonstrated adequate capability in all areas with exceptional adaptability between modes. Gideon laughed, a slightly hysterical sound escaping his throat. "We're the jack-of-all-trades species. We're not the best at anything. We're just okay at everything." "Correct assessment," the archive confirmed, and somehow it sounded almost pleased. "Specialization creates vulnerability. Adaptation ensures survival. Humanity's mediocrity is their strength." The gallery erupted. Some species seemed insulted by the assessment of their strengths. Others appeared thoughtful. Amos looked like someone had just informed him his precious mathematical precision was actually a limiting factor. "If this archive was built for humans," a crustacean military officer demanded, "why allow other species access to it at all?" Archive was not built for human exclusivity. Archive was built for human mediation. Gideon felt something click in his mind. "You're not a treasure vault. You're a library with a very specific checkout system." Accurate metaphor. The Precursor Collective anticipated conflict over advanced knowledge. Human neurological structure allows interface. Human social adaptability encourages cooperation. The archive cannot be accessed without human participation. "But once accessed, the information can be shared?" Lanta asked. "Information sharing is encouraged. Knowledge hoarded is knowledge wasted. The precursors designed this system to require collaboration." Bannock let out a low whistle. "They weaponized humans by making them necessary." "Not weaponized," the archive corrected. "Positioned. Humanity lacks the military might to hoard resources, the technological advancement to exploit knowledge unilaterally, or the political influence to dominate through force. They are simultaneously essential and non-threatening. An ideal mediator species." "That's actually brilliant," Silmora said quietly, "and slightly insulting to humans." "I'll take it," Gideon replied. "Being non-threatening sounds way better than being targeted." He pressed deeper into the interface, information flowing into his mind faster than he could consciously process. The archive wasn't just data, It was alive in some fundamental way. Not sentient, but aware. A vast crystallized intelligence left behind by beings who'd seen the patterns of galactic civilization and decided to nudge things in a more productive direction. Images flashed through his consciousness. The Precursor Collective. Not a single species, but an alliance of 6 highly advanced civilizations, each reaching the limits of their own evolutionary potential. They'd recognized the coming stagnation, the eventual decline that awaited any species that grew too comfortable with its own superiority. So they'd looked forward, identified emerging species with potential, and created gifts, customized to each species' eventual needs. The Obsidian archive was just one of potentially hundreds scattered across the galaxy, each waiting for its designated operators to reach the stars and find them. "There are more," Gideon said aloud. "More archives, different ones for different species. This isn't special because it's the only one. It's special because humans found it first." "Where are the others?" Ames demanded. "The archive won't say. They're out there, waiting. But here's the thing. The precursors didn't want species hoarding their gifts. They wanted exchange. The archives are designed to encourage trade, cooperation, mutual advancement." "Through forced human mediation," the military officer said darkly. "Through optional human mediation," Gideon corrected. "You don't have to use this archive. You can wait and find your own. But if you want access to this one, you work with humans, and presumably, when other species find their archives, we'll need to work with them." The implications settled over the chamber like gravitational weight. This wasn't just about one artifact. This was about restructuring galactic politics around cooperation instead of competition. "The precursors were playing the long game," Lanta said, wonder in her voice. "They couldn't force species to work together, so they created circumstances where cooperation becomes the logical choice." "Devious," Bannock muttered. "Brilliant, but devious." "There's more," Gideon said, still connected to the archive's flow of information. "The knowledge in here isn't just technology. It's art, philosophy, history, cultural records from 6 extinct civilizations. The precursors didn't just leave us tools. They left us themselves. Everything they learned, everything they created, everything they were." He pulled his hands back, breathing hard. The connection severed, leaving him feeling oddly empty. "So, what happens now?" Silmora asked. Before Gideon could answer, alarms shrieked through the amphitheater. Des's gaseous form turned a violent crimson. "We have multiple ships entering weapons range, military vessels, 3 different species, all broadcasting territorial claims over the artifact." Bannock's scales flushed dark with anger. "Of course they are." The observation gallery descended into chaos as representatives scattered, some fleeing, others shouting demands into communication devices. Gideon looked at the monolith, still glowing softly, patient and eternal. "Archive," he said quietly. "Any advice for handling an armed conflict over your existence?" "Recommendation: demonstrate value of cooperation over competition. Suggest shared access under mediated protocols. Alternative: allow aggressive parties to eliminate each other while you escape with archive to neutral location." Gideon blinked. "Did you just suggest we run away and let them fight?" "Affirmative. Precursors anticipated this scenario. Archive is portable. Human operator is essential. Logical conclusion: remove both from conflict zone." "I'm starting to really like this thing," Bannock said, already moving toward the exit. "We can't just steal a universal artifact," Lanta protested. "It's not stealing," Gideon replied, a grin spreading across his face. It's emergency preservation of culturally significant material. Totally different. That's absolutely stealing, Des pointed out. Then let's steal really fast. The universe was about to get complicated. Getting a 3-meter-tall ancient monolith off a research station while 3 separate military fleets argued over who got to blow each other up was not, strictly speaking, the smartest thing Gideon had ever done. But it definitely made the top 5. "Loading Bay 3!" Bannock hissed, his scales flickering through stress patterns that probably spelled out obscenities in reptilian. "Silmora's prepping the ship. We have maybe 10 minutes before someone notices we're moving the archive." "Someone's definitely going to notice," Des pointed out, their gaseous form compressed into the smallest sphere possible for speed. "It's not exactly subtle." They were right. The monolith, even dimmed, glowed with enough ambient light to serve as a navigation beacon. Stealth was not an option. Speed, however, was. Lanta had insisted on coming with them, claiming diplomatic immunity, and something about ensuring proper protocols were followed. Gideon suspected she just wanted to see how this disaster would unfold. He couldn't blame her. He kind of wanted to see that too. The loading bay doors opened to reveal their salvage ship, looking particularly pathetic next to the sleek military vessels visible through the station's viewports. Silmora stood at the cargo ramp, waving frantically. "Move! Move! Move!" she chittered. "Station security just realized the amphitheater is empty. They're not happy." "Are we sure this is a good idea?" Lanta asked, rippling with what might have been anxiety or excitement. With mollusks, it was hard to tell. "Absolutely not," Gideon replied, helping guide the loading mech that carried the archive. "But good ideas are overrated." They got the monolith secured in the cargo bay with roughly 30 seconds to spare before station security arrived. Bannock sealed the airlock and gunned the engines, and their ship lurched away from Babel Hub with all the grace of a drunk meteor. "We're being hailed," Des announced, "by everyone, simultaneously. The communication array is actually smoking." "Ignore them," Bannock ordered, banking the ship hard to avoid a crustacean destroyer that had moved to intercept. "Gideon, get to the cargo bay. See if your magical artifact has any helpful suggestions for not getting vaporized." Gideon stumbled through the ship's corridors, Silmora and Lanta close behind. The monolith sat in its restraints, pulsing with that patient, eternal glow. "Okay," Gideon said, pressing his hands against its surface. "We've got multiple hostile ships, probably some very angry politicians, and zero plan. Any wisdom from the ancient super-civilization?" The archive's voice filled the cargo bay. "Current situation assessment. Suboptimal. Probability of successful escape, 14%. Probability of capture, 32%. Probability of destruction, 51%. Recommendation? Initiate broadcast protocol." What's broadcast protocol? Archive possesses limited Ansible communication capability. Sufficient range to reach all major population centers in this galactic sector. Suggest transmitting archive's purpose and contents to general public. Difficult to claim exclusive ownership of widely distributed knowledge. Gideon stared at the monolith. "You want to just give it all away? All the technology? All the knowledge? Just broadcast it to everyone?" Affirmative. The precursors designed multiple fail-safes against knowledge hoarding. Public distribution represents optimal outcome. Conflict becomes pointless when prize becomes ubiquitous. "That's insane," Silmora breathed. "That's perfect," Lanta corrected, her bioluminescence brightening with excitement. "If everyone has access, no one can claim monopoly. The archive becomes a shared resource rather than a contested prize." But the chaos, Silmora protested. Releasing that much advanced technology without preparation, without oversight, without giving powerful entities time to weaponize it first, Gideon interrupted. Yeah, it'll be messy, but the precursors built this thing specifically for humanity to manage, and, apparently, our management style is creative chaos. The ship rocked as a warning shot sizzled past their hull. Bannock's voice crackled over the intercom. Whatever you're doing down there, do it faster. Gideon looked at Lanta, then at Silmora. This is it. Once we do this, there's no taking it back. Every species gets access to precursor knowledge simultaneously. It could revolutionize civilization or tear it apart. Or both, Des added via the comm system, always helpful. The precursors trusted humanity to make this choice, Lanta said softly. Perhaps we should trust their judgment. Gideon laughed, a slightly manic sound. They trusted humanity because we're too mediocre to effectively monopolize anything. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement. No, Silmora said, her mandibles clicking in a pattern Gideon had learned meant she was working through something complex. They trusted humanity because mediocrity means balance. You don't excel at destruction, so you won't immediately weaponize the knowledge. You don't excel at construction, so you'll need cooperation to implement it. You don't excel at politics, so you can't effectively gatekeep it. You're the perfect species to be custodians precisely because you lack the capability to be tyrants. That's either the best compliment or worst insult I've ever received. Both, Silmora confirmed. Definitely both. Another impact rocked the ship. Time was running out. Archive, Gideon said. Initiate broadcast protocol. Send everything. No restrictions, no limitations. Let's see what the galaxy does with a gift. Acknowledged. Beginning transmission. Estimated completion. 90 seconds. Warning. This action cannot be reversed. Good, Gideon said. The best decisions usually can't be. The monolith blazed with light, its surface transforming into something that looked like a contained star. Energy pulsed outward, and Gideon could feel it even through the ship's hull. Information flowing across Ansible channels, touching every connected device in the sector. On Babel Hub, researchers' consoles suddenly filled with precursor blueprints. On the avian homeworld, mathematicians gasped as elegant proofs for previously unsolvable problems appeared in their databases. Across insectoid hive networks, efficient resource management algorithms spread like beneficial viruses. In mollusk diplomatic centers, new frameworks for conflict resolution propagated through their collective consciousness. And in the military vessels surrounding their ship, weapons systems suddenly seemed a lot less important than the torrent of new knowledge flooding their databases. The comm system crackled. Bannock's voice carried equal parts awe and terror. They're backing off. All of them. They're just backing off. Hard to fight over something everyone already has, Gideon said. The archive's glow dimmed, settling back to its normal patient luminescence. Transmission complete. Archive contents distributed to 816 million receiving devices across 600 inhabited systems. Knowledge dissemination successful. Primary objective achieved. Just like that? Silmora asked. Millions of years of accumulated wisdom, and you just give it away? Knowledge hoarded is knowledge wasted, the archive replied. The precursors did not preserve their legacy to create new hierarchies. They preserved it to accelerate development of successor civilizations. This outcome aligns with original design parameters. Lanta's bioluminescence rippled in what Gideon had learned to recognize as profound satisfaction. The precursors weren't building monuments to themselves. They were investing in the future. And they picked humans to manage the investment because we're too incompetent to keep it for ourselves, Gideon added. I'm choosing to take that as a compliment. The comm crackled again. This time it was an official channel from Babel Hub. Amis's voice, notably lacking its usual pompous confidence. Salvage vessel, this is Dr. Amis. We're receiving reports of widespread data distribution from your location. Can you confirm the archive's contents have been publicly released? Gideon grabbed the comm. Confirmed, Doctor. The archive decided everyone should have access. Turns out ancient supercivilizations are big on sharing. A long pause, then, quietly, the equations are beautiful. I've been studying precursor mathematics for 30 years, and the actual formulas are more elegant than anything we'd theorized. This is going to change everything. That's kind of the point, Gideon replied. Yes. Well, there will still need to be hearings, protocols, documentation, but perhaps they can wait until after we've all had time to study this gift. Another pause. Thank you, human Gideon, for having the courage to do what none of us would have. The comm clicked off. Gideon stood in the cargo bay, hand still pressed against the archive's surface, feeling the weight of what they'd just done. So, Bannock said, appearing in the doorway with Des floating beside him. We just fundamentally altered galactic civilization. Anyone want protein paste? I'm stress-eating. They gathered in the ship's tiny common area, an unlikely crew who'd stumbled into history and somehow survived. The view screen showed Babel Hub receding, military vessels dispersing, the normal chaos of space traffic resuming as if the universe hadn't just shifted on its axis. The archive called me operator, Gideon said, breaking the companionable silence. But it also called me something else. Architect. What did it mean? Silmora pulled up the transmitted data on a console, scanning through the vast indexes. There, in the cultural records, the precursors had a term for individuals who could see the larger pattern, who could understand how pieces fit together into something greater than their parts. They called them architects, not builders, but designers, visionaries. Humanity's mediocrity gives them vision, Lonta said thoughtfully. Because they don't excel at any one thing, they can see how all things connect. They're the species that looks at diversity and sees possibility rather than competition. You're giving us way too much credit, Gideon protested. We're just as capable of screwing things up as anyone else. Oh, undoubtedly, Des agreed. But you screw things up in interesting ways. And when you succeed, you tend to bring others along for the success rather than hoarding it. Is that really our defining trait? Being okay at everything and willing to share? Considering the alternative is being excellent at one thing and terrible at cooperation? Bannock's tail swished thoughtfully. I'll take the mediocre team players over the brilliant tyrants. The archive pulsed gently in the cargo bay, its work complete. But somehow, Gideon knew this wasn't the end. The precursors had left other archives scattered across the galaxy. Other gifts for other species, each designed to encourage cooperation, to break down barriers, to transform competition into collaboration. And humanity's gift was to be the mediators, the translators, the ones who could work with anyone because they weren't threatening to anyone. The cosmic middle managers of an ancient civilization's grand plan. You know what's funny? Gideon said, staring out at the stars. We spent so long trying to prove we were special, trying to show we belonged among the galactic community. And it turns out we're special precisely because we're not exceptional. We're special because we're average. The precursors saw potential in balance, Silmora said. They understood that the species which could adapt to everything would outlast the species that perfected one thing. So what now? Bannock asked. We've got an ancient artifact that's distributed all its knowledge. Do we keep it? Return it? Sell it for parts? We keep exploring, Gideon said. The archive said there are others out there. If humanity's supposed to be mediators, we should probably meet the other species the precursors chose, help them find their gifts, make sure this whole cooperation thing actually works. That sounds suspiciously like having a purpose, Des observed. I know. Weird, right? The ship's navigation system beeped. Bannock pulled up the star charts, and his scales shifted to a surprised orange. Well, this is interesting. The archive just updated our navigation database. There's a marker here, coordinates to another potential precursor site. Of course there is, Gideon said, grinning. The precursors didn't just leave us knowledge. They left us a treasure map, multiple treasure maps, an entire galaxy of gifts waiting to be found and shared. So we're treasure hunters now? Silmora asked. Treasure sharers, Lanta corrected. An important distinction. Treasure sharers who occasionally steal ancient artifacts from research stations, Des added. Emergency preservation, Gideon protested. Totally different. They plotted the course to the new coordinates, a salvage crew that had become something more. Mediators, architects, the cosmic middle managers of an ancient civilization's final gift to the galaxy. And as their ship jumped to faster-than-light speeds, the Obsidian archive sat quietly in the cargo bay, its purpose fulfilled, but its journey just beginning. Because the precursors had understood something fundamental about the universe, knowledge shared multiplies, but knowledge hoarded dies. They'd chosen humanity not because humans were the strongest or smartest or most advanced, but because humans were the species most likely to pass it on. The mediocre ones, the balanced ones, the ones who were just okay at everything. Turned out that was exactly what the galaxy needed. Gideon leaned back in his chair, watching stars streak past, and laughed. Somewhere in the cosmic infrastructure, the archive's final designation for him had updated one last time. Not operator, not architect, curator, the keeper of gifts meant to be given away, the translator between species and knowledge, the human who said hello to an ancient monument and accidentally became responsible for reshaping galactic civilization. You know, he said to his crew, I'm starting to think the precursors had a sense of humor. Why's that? Bannock asked. Because they took one look at humanity's spectacular mediocrity and thought, yes, these are the ones we'll trust with everything. That's not wisdom. That's comedy. Or faith, Lanta suggested quietly. Or both, Silmora said. Probably both. The universe was vast, filled with ancient mysteries and species still finding their place among the stars. And somewhere out there, more archives waited. More gifts, more chances for cooperation over competition. All of them waiting for someone mediocre enough to share them with everyone. The Obsidian archive had rejected every species' data, recognized a human voice as creator, and proceeded to give away the galaxy's greatest treasure to anyone willing to listen. Turned out the best way to preserve knowledge wasn't to protect it. It was to set it free. And humanity, in all its spectacular, average, beautifully mediocre glory, was exactly the species to make that happen.